there are two ways that siding can be vulnerable on your house. Two ways. So one, and these are related to combustible siding products: wood, composite wood, vinyl. Those are the common combustible siding products that might be on the side of your house. If they ignite, the siding can burn vertically up and then impinge on your window, the under eave area, a vent. We saw a picture of that earlier in this video series. Or they can burn through a lap joint. Doesn't matter whether you have a horizontal lap kind of a siding product, such as we see in the right-hand picture here, or a panelized siding product like plywood T111, where you might have a vertical lap joint. It's the fire burning through the siding at a lap joint or any other point and getting into your house that way. In the left-hand picture, these two wall sections had the same kind of burning brand put at the base of the wall at the beginning of the demonstration. The siding product facing you is a fiber cement siding product, and the product burning is a composite wood siding product. So if it doesn't ignite, then it's not going to be a problem for you. So you've seen this picture before when we talked about vents, but here we're going to talk about siding and near the home conditions. So the way that siding can ignite, it can ignite if flames touch it from whatever location, or potentially if it receives a long radiant heat exposure, can ignite that way too. In this situation, the siding comes pretty close to the ground. You can see that here next to the plastic drain pipe. So embers can ignite this area pretty readily and ignite the siding that way. And we've talked about this sort of incessantly, but having this non-combustible zone right next to the siding would preclude largely the ignition from embers. So that's thing one you can do to protect your combustible siding product. The other thing, though, that we talked about that applies here is making sure that non-combustible zone horizontally also works for you vertically. So you have this vertical and horizontal non-combustible zones, so that embers that land at the base of the wall don't have anything to ignite. So the picture on the right shows, at least in this location, a pretty good example of this vertical non-combustible zone. Even this home could stand a little bit of maintenance and remove some of the grass that's growing and other debris that has been accumulated sort of near this home. But in concept, this is this type of thing that you would want to see. You just would want not to have the leaf litter build up at that ground to wall intersection that we see here, nor the greener grass that we see here. Here we've seen this picture before, but it does demonstrate the problems with igniting combustible siding in terms of the fire's capability to burn laterally and vertically on the wall. Before that fire had a chance to burn through the siding and the sheathing in this particular building, it had impinged on the window, impinged on that gable end vent, and impinged in the under attic area. It entered the attic area through that under eave area and the vent, long before the fire penetrated the siding. And in some cases, we did this demonstration a few times, and in some cases, this glass in this single pane window actually broke.
The issue here is that we see kind of a domino effect of one component leading to another, one issue leading to another issue. But what's really driving it is that there's a bunch of combustible mulch around the house. So if the combustible mulch was not there, we wouldn't have seen the initial trigger to create more embers and get more penetration into the vents, the under eave areas, and the siding. So, gotta take a step back and figure out what's the first piece to fail in that system.
And to sort of reiterate Jana's point, there are many situations where you can have a non-combustible wall and still have a destroyed home. We have two examples that we're looking at in this picture. The left-hand picture is from a 2003 fire in San Diego County, and the right-hand picture is the Tubbs fire. It's the Kmart store in Santa Rosa. So you can't see the inside of the Kmart store, but it is gutted. It is nothing. It's completely burned. But from the outside, this wall looks in good condition. There are burn in the left-hand picture. There are definitely scorch marks on the siding, but clearly the house is lost. So if you only have to worry about ember exposures, the siding that you have doesn't really matter as long as you have these non-combustible zones, both horizontally and vertically, where non-combustible siding would be useful is if you have a neighbor that's very close to you, within 20, 30 feet, let's say 30 feet or so. If your neighbor's house is potentially has the potential for ignition, that could result in a flaming or radiant heat exposure long enough and large enough to cause damage to your home and ignite your siding or break glass in your window. These are situations where having a non-combustible product can be beneficial when the likelihood of a radiant heat exposure or flame contact exposure is elevated. So we're going to finish up this presentation by just talking about coatings. I think a lot of people have a question as to whether or not they can use a fire retardant paint and have that provide sufficient protection for their siding. There's been a fair amount of research lately on the how well and how long these coating products work when used on the outside of a building. What you can find on the market these days are coatings that say they're good for 5 years. Research that we did at IBHS, and that has been also conducted at NIST, the National Institute for Standards and Technology. The coatings that are available don't really last as long as they say they do. In our study, the fire retardant coatings were providing protection no different than uncoated wood in about a year. So I don't think you want to be in a position to be coating your home every year with this fire retardant coating product. So for now, coatings aren't an option based on research, and Chapter 7A in the California Building Code doesn't allow the use of coatings as a means to comply with the building code. So I think in the future, we will have formulations and application procedures whereby you can have a fire retardant coating that will provide longer term protection. But today, that's just not the case.
So when I talk to people who are interested in home hardening, the first thing they usually want to talk to me about is it time for me to replace my siding? I'll hear that question time and time again. Or when I talk to someone who's thinking about building a home of the future, the place that they start the conversation is around siding. And what I hope you're learning from these videos is that really siding falls away in its importance if you can manage the other issues. And so the other issues are really about creating separation both vertically and horizontally from combustible materials like mulch, like woody plants. And if you can do that, then it doesn't matter so much about what siding choice you choose. The exception to that, of course, is when your neighbors are close by or there's an outbuilding that's close by, and then you need to be thinking more about radiant heat and the exposure that a particular wall or your neighborhood is likely to experience. And then it's worth putting the extra investment in to choose something that's going to be non-combustible. In general, a way to think about this is that the more gaps and joints you have between panels or between laps, that creates more points for flexion, and so you can get little weaknesses and places where fire can get into the wall cavity. So panels do better than individual lap siding overall, but if you can manage the exposure, then you get to choose something that meets your aesthetics and meets your overall interest in the kind of look you want for your house.